So the memory issue is something that has been coming up, I mean, over and over and over again. I mean, the one thing we see with our kids that struggle, regardless of whether they have dyslexia or any other learning disability, that memory is always that underlying issue that's causing problems. We need to figure out how to be more efficient and get information in and let it stay in so that we're less frustrated, really. Let's just, be selfish, okay? Because we hate saying the same thing over and over again. So if we can be more efficient, then we're happier, then that's really all that matters, okay? Right? Okay? It's happy teacher, happy life, I don't know, goes like that. So when we're in the classroom, I think we have a huge turnover with our teachers, over the years, and I've trained thousands of teachers now, and I see a common thread is that teachers say they leave because of money or administration, and that's what they say. I mean, there are studies, that's what teachers report, right? But I want you to raise your hand if you got into education for the money. Right? So is that a big shocker? That's why everyone left, because they weren't making enough money? I don't think that's the reason. And then they'll say administration. Well, I got observed like twice a year. They came in twice a year. They didn't want to make me upset because I volunteered for every committee, so I got like all excellence, right? So I didn't matter, right? So I had administration in my room like twice a year for 15 minutes, okay? So would it be administration would be the reason why I didn't want to be in the classroom? And so what I've observed is that teachers are leaving the classroom because they don't feel effective, right? I think they're in there and they're working super hard and they have long hours and they're cutting out lots of snowflakes and shamrocks, and I'm not an elementary school teacher by nature, so I don't understand that behavior. But I've learned to accept it. I'm like, if you want to sit in front of the TV and cut out 500 shamrocks, I don't care. I don't want to hear you complaining about it, but I don't care, right? So what I found is that when they're effective and they're doing a good job, that's what we want. That's what we want to see. We want to know that our work is being, it's working, because who wants to do a job that they don't feel effective? And when we don't feel effective, then we look for other reasons why we're not being effective. Like, parents these days. If the parents were just reading to their kids, if they were more involved, it would be great, right? But we're with them 8 hours a day. Administration comes in our room like an hour a year. We have a lot of control. But sometimes we don't know the best way to get information in. We get frustrated. And what happens with frustration, just kind of like parenting, if you're, does anyone have kids in here? Okay. Well, if you're a parent, you may have been frustrated once or twice, okay? If you don't have kids yet, then you think that's the way it goes, okay? But frustration is really kind of when you're out of tools. You don't know what else to do, so you rave like a lunatic, right? And I see that a lot with teachers is they're just like, I've told you this a million times, because obviously telling them 1,000,001 times isn't going to matter, but we're so frustrated we feel like we need to tell them that, right? And so we do that with our kids, and then we have to apologize. But what I've realized is that's what it is. It's the tools. We are asking teachers to dig a ditch with a spoon, and right behind the bushes is a backhoe, right? But then the spoon, we're digging, and they're like, nope, it has to be a bigger ditch, it has to be wider, it has to be longer, come on, work harder. And then we say, oh, we need a different spoon. So they get you a different spoon. Maybe we need a metal spoon instead of our plastic spoon. Maybe we need 2 spoons, and we could spoon at the same time, instead of being more efficient. So that's kind of the way I look at how I like to work with teachers and work with kids, is I don't want to waste the kids' time either, because we have these artificial standards where we say you have to get to here by the end of the year. Well, why can't you get to there? Well, what would we teach them in 2nd grade? That. Like, why can't we keep going? So I think, if we can be more efficient, then our expectations can be higher, and the memory component is huge for that. Because what keeps us back is the fact that we need to do a lot of repetition because we're not really taking into account the research behind memory and what we really need to do to get information to stay inside the brain, okay? And the biggest problem I see is that in classrooms across the country, because I've trained from Atlanta to Oregon, and when I'm in classrooms, all over the entire country. Actually, I'm visiting a classroom in China, and I'm really hoping they don't do it there. But I'll be there in a week. And in the United States, we are peeing in the classroom every day. Teachers are peeing on their students nonstop, okay? So I saw this once, and it just resonated with me, and I can't remember who said it. Have you guys ever heard that, of teachers peeing on their students? So I saw it, and I feel bad because I can't give the man credit, and I haven't been able to find the video, but he was sitting right next to Louisa Moats, okay? That's the best I can do, because I can't remember what his name was, but I want to give him credit. So he's the one that first observed the phenomenon of peeing on students, and I decided that that's what I want to make my life's crusade, is to stop teachers from doing that. So when teachers pee on their students, what is really happening is they are posting information on the wall, and they say, here's the wall, here's an anchor chart. If I hear anchor chart one more time, okay? So I was just with a kindergarten teacher, and she's like, oh, I'm so excited, I made all these anchor charts. It's the first couple weeks of kindergarten. She put up her word wall, it has it on it. Her anchor chart says, concentrate. I was like, is that for you? I think they can't even read it on your word wall, but you've got concentrate. And it was so beautifully colored. I know she spent all weekend on it. So I kept that comment to myself. Okay, so I figured I would work slowly into that. So you post it on the wall, right? You explain what it means. Okay, so you would talk to your kindergartners and say concentrate. It means to focus, right? So they could focus. Is that going to help? No. And then you expect it, right? So they explain that to the kids, and then you say, I expect this to happen. And so it starts that young, where we, as teachers, we are sometimes dictators. We get to say whatever we want in front of the room, and everyone has to be our little minion and listen to us. And that's the one problem with training teachers now, because I can't give detentions or any of that stuff, so I have to be a lot nicer. But when we pee on them, what we're doing is we're saying, here's what you need to know. I'm going to explain it to you. Of course, I know it really, really well. And then on Friday, you're going to have a test. And then I'm going to be like, I told them 1,000 times. They still can't do it. Okay? Which happens in teachers' lounges all over the country. You just go in there, and you just listen. And they're just frustrated, So I've done it 1,000,000 times, and they still can't do it. I'm like, okay, well, who's the idiot here, right? Okay, so if it doesn't work, you should try something different, do it differently. But, they fall into that repetitive trap of, it's not really my fault, that it's somebody else's fault, right? And so these kids, it's their first time in that grade. You've been doing it for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, however long. They haven't seen it that often. So it's really something that we need to pay attention to. We need to remember what it's like to do it for the first time and remember that that's what they're doing. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that. And so please stop peeing on your students, okay? So my kids are in college now, but all through high school, it was the most frustrating experience because it was just, they get yelled at every day about not being organized. My kids would come home and say, oh, we got another lecture. My daughter's math teacher was saying things like, I quit working on Wall Street to come give back to the youth of America, and you guys are ungrateful, and I make no money, and you don't take this seriously. And my kids, I'm like, no way. So I said, you know what? Teachers are people too. She's just frustrated. Let's go in and meet with her. And, I'm sure she's reasonable. Let's go in, have a conference. I'm sure she's not that bad. So we went in and we sat down with her. And, you know, I'm always a teacher defender. You know, I'm like, they probably had a bad day. You don't know what happened last period, all that stuff. And when I left that meeting, I was like, bitch. So I was like, sorry, you know, there are bad eggs in my profession. But she probably was involved in all that Wall Street scandal and got fired, right? So, you know, I'm like, I don't want to be like that. You know, she's obviously a miserable individual. But she pees on them all day, lectures, and expects them to be different, right? Okay? But we're not going to do that anymore, right? So I want you guys all to repeat after me. I will not pee on my students. Okay, I didn't hear it. Thank you very much. Parents are going to be so excited. Okay. So next, you are allowed to do-do, okay? Okay? So this you guys have all heard, right? Do, right? No peeing, do is perfectly fine. This is for you guys, okay? You don't need to walk into your class, you know, next week and be like, hey, I'm here to poop on you, okay? But we're talking about how we're going to give instruction, because the way you give instruction is going to maximize memory capacity. And so what's happening, though, is our kids are coming in with poor memories, and we're getting higher standards that we have to complete, and we're getting worse raw product. So, you know, we have to be more efficient. So the first thing is you're going to model. That's the I do. I'm going to model it. And this is really awesome because this is how I get to say, what are you doing today? I'm modeling. I'm modeling. Yeah, modeling all day. And then they're like, what, field and stream? I don't know. But so then we have, we're going to practice. Okay, so we're going to practice that activity. Okay, and so then we're going to ask them to do it. And so I put assessment, but assessment is not a test. It doesn't have to be a test. It is just, I'm assessing. I am diagnostically looking at what you can do. And so the analogy I always use for this is a coaching model. Because if you are a basketball coach, okay, you can pick from a group of kids, you're going to look at them and you're going to say, okay, who's tall, right? I'm going to go for tall because that's a good predictor. Maybe they'll be good. Who's coordinated? They can't play basketball, but I've seen them on the playground and running around doing stuff, so I'm going to pick that kid. You know, and who might be fast? Because then I'm kind of looking at my prerequisites for what you would need to be a good basketball player, right? So with reading, unfortunately, the prerequisite skills are invisible. So you can't necessarily see them because I want a brain scanning machine, but no one will buy me one. And so sometimes with the kids, I pretend I have one. I'm like, well, I scanned your brains, and they're all like, they're like, really? I'm like, maybe. So you want to, you know, you're going to model, right? You're a basketball coach. You're going to say, okay, let's dribble, right? We're going to dribble. Like some kids are going to like start drooling food out of their mouth, or what are they, you know, if they don't know what that is, they're going to have to explain it. And, you know, using just words is pretty confusing. Well, you're going to take this like cylindrical object, and it's, you know, got little dimples on it, and it's about 12 inches wide, and I don't even know or play basketball, but you get the point. You're going to bounce it for them and let them see, right? So you'll model that. Then you're going to practice it together. And as the coach, coaches know who is terrible and who is good, right? They know who has some natural talent and who's going to need a lot more work, right? And they know before they get to the you-do, before they get to the game, who's not going to do well, right? So when teachers say to me, well, gosh, half my class failed. And I was like, no, you failed. How did they fail? You should have given them a test after you knew they knew it, right? Isn't that the goal? So you have one fail out of a classroom, right? But if you've got all of them failing, you know, that's something that you kind of need to look at yourself. Like from a coaching model, you get fired, right? your team's not doing well, right? And the thing about this is nobody says, okay, you're 5 years old, you're going to be on a basketball team, I want you to go down and play with the Atlanta Hawks and just go practice with them, and we'll see you at the game on Saturday, right? But in school we say, oh, go home and read with your mom. And if they're not reading well, we hear, have you been reading with your mom? Right? It's always the mom, right? And so coaches don't do that. They wouldn't say that. You know, you're terrible at dribbling. You know, you're terrible in the game. You failed the game, right? Do coaches say that? You failed the game? No, they look at tapes and they say, you can't dribble and you can't shoot, you know, and you're too slow. And so then when you go back to practice, you're going to dribble and you're going to shoot and you're going to do sprints. Do you see it? We target those skills. And so reading is this man-made skill that people think should be natural, but nobody expects everybody to be a natural basketball player. So if you try out for basketball and you're not good, then the coach will be like, you know, sorry, but chess is down the hall, right? And you can get cut, but we need reading to be able to survive, right? We need to be able to do it. You may not be the best reader or best basketball player ever, but we can get you to as far as we can possibly get you. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, we have prerequisite skills, and kids don't grow into them. You can't say, oh, give them another year, okay? But you have prerequisite skills. If you're a basketball player, you're going to have prerequisite skills. You know, nobody wants the kid in the cast, right, with the patch over one eye, okay? Right? They're like, I don't want him on my team. Okay, but as teachers, we can't say, this kid is reading like a kid with a cast and a patch over one eye. Okay, I've got to take them and do what I can to level that playing field for them. Okay? So the post, explain, expect model puts the blame on the kids, and this puts the responsibility on the teacher. Do you see the difference? And when you have that responsibility, believe it or not, you have power. When you have power, you have control. When you have control, you can do great things, right? And then you're less frustrated, because I challenge you to find an occupation that has less supervision than a teacher. People don't think that that's true, but watch McDonald's. Like, go to McDonald's, okay? They like, every 2 seconds, they know every single order they filled, whether it was 3 minutes or 2 minutes, or whether they got complaints, or they're on video and everything's under their name. I mean, companies out there, the supervision is, I mean, we are free to do so much, and we don't appreciate it. So if we were to like take advantage of this, we could do great things, okay? So I'm going to teach you a mnemonic that I use called CARS, and I do P, do, and CARS at the beginning of every training that I do, because people are like, when are we going to get to curriculum? I'm like, curriculum doesn't matter if you don't do it correctly, right? Because people will say, I do your curriculum, and I say, I wear yoga pants, okay? So, you know, like, the way you do it matters more than what you say you do, right? Right? So we all know we've met, like, you know, doctors that were like, where'd you go for that degree? And then we've got other people who are just naturals at doing stuff that really don't have as much training. So I'm always about the details. The devil's in the details, right? We want to see how you're doing it, what you're doing. You may not know the right terminology for it, or someone uses other terminology, but that's not the important thing to me. Okay, I've been teaching reading now for 25 years. I could go into an IEP meeting and humiliate people with big words, okay? That's not going to please anyone, right? It's going to make them feel bad. You know, I might feel good for a second, but then it'll fade, because what I've done is alienated those people from being able to help kids, right? So we need to meet people where they are. We need to meet the kids where they are. We need to meet our colleagues where they are, and sometimes they are really, really far behind, okay? And they need us. So when I talk to IDA, it's a different group, you know, than some of the groups I talk to, because, you know, you guys are more educated about reading than most people. Because there are a lot of things, like I say I work with dyslexics, and then they'll say, oh, I've never worked with a dyslexic. I work with struggling readers. And I say, oh, I work with them too. And struggling teachers too. So because you want them to feel empowered so that they feel like pursuing it, it's the same with kids, right? So if we can get through the P, don't pee on them, because you can use my curriculum to pee too. You just spout it out, let the kids all sit there. I don't know what you're thinking right now. This is like the scenario I hate the most. People just looking at me going, I really have to pee, because she keeps mentioning it. Now I can't get out because I'm in the middle. Okay? You know, I don't know what you're thinking, you know, like my grocery list, or I shouldn't have had so much to drink at the open bar at the Coke thing last night. All right? Did you guys go to Coca-Cola last night? Did anyone go? It was good, huh? I thought it was pretty good. Okay, so that's why we want to make sure that we're doing it correctly, okay? So this is the way we should do it, and this has everything to do with memory. So you need to chunk information into small bits. Kids used to come into school where they could hold, 7 plus or minus, right? They used to say you can hold 7 units in your short-term working memory, plus or minus 2, okay? Well, now kids come in and they're like goldfish, okay? So they're just like Dory, you know, like what just happened? Because there's so much technology. I mean, I went out for pizza the other night, and the family comes in, and a mom is holding an iPad with a stand. It's this big. And she puts them on the booth on that side, puts it down, and turns it on, so both her kids are like, I was so mad. My friend I was eating dinner with, she's like, down, girl, down. I was like, and she goes, look over there, they're making paper airplanes. I'm like, I know, it's so heartwarming. Because I'm like, these kids, I just want to be like, you know what they're doing to their reading ability? You know, their comprehension, you're shortening their working memory capacity. They're never getting into Harvard at this rate, okay? But I drank my wine, which is how I soothe myself. So, I know, my wine bill would be like so low if people just would put away technology. I know I might be blaming people for my issues, but I'm also trying to drown the fact that I thought I'd grow into being a supermodel. You know, like, they keep saying 1 more year, the reading is going to kick in. I keep thinking 1 more year, I'm going to be a supermodel. But it seems to be deteriorating. So with information, if we dispense it in 2 to 3, in 2 to 3 units at a time, we can get more information in over the same time frame. So if you think about it, like if you've ever had a cake sitting on your kitchen counter. Have you ever had a cake sitting on your kitchen counter? And you walk by and you just take a little bite, right? And then you walk by again and you might grab a little bite, you know, and then all of a sudden at the end of the day you're like, oh, we'll have cake for dessert. And you look over and you're like, wow, where'd it go? Right? You're like, I could have never eaten a whole cake. But have you eaten the whole cake? I know, we all have, okay? But then what you do is you bury it under the trash so no one knows that it ever happened, like any of the wrappers. It works like magic, okay? So if you have more than 1 Snickers bar, just bury it under. It means it never happened, okay? So we want to chunk information so that kids are actually digesting a whole cake before they even realize that they've eaten the whole cake, right? Because we can do that for them, right? We can break it down. So if we have 20 units of information and we give them 2 at a time, even if we're going to do it over the same 2-hour period, it's going to be more effective if we can break it down into smaller pieces. Okay? This also really works well for training pets, right? You're not going to start with sit, roll over, play dead at the same time, right? You're going to start with sit, and you're going to repeat it over and over again. You're going to break it down to smaller chunks. I used to say it was really good for training husbands, but I'm recently divorced, so I guess I can't say that anymore. So when cars doesn't work, just get rid of them. Okay, so chunk information, right? We're going to allow for success, and that is the biggest thing, is that when you've got kids who are not successful, if you don't bring it down to a level where they can be successful and build them back up from there, you won't get their buy-in, okay? And the thing about getting their buy-in that's important is it saves you time, energy, and your wine bill goes down, right? Because we all have those kids where we're like, oh my gosh, if Billy's absent, my life is great, you know? But we would rather be happy that Billy was there. So we want kids to feel successful. And when I work with little kids, I had a little kid come in and I'm testing him, because I've done a lot of testing. I was gonna tell you my background, but I totally forgot. I may have attention issues, I'm not sure. But I used to do a lot of testing, and so I test a lot of kids one-on-one. I go into schools and I've tested thousands of kids. But this one kid came in, and I usually, I have a reading center as well, when they come in, I ask them why they're there, because I have weird parents who think that they can tell their kid they're there for enrichment or whatever, like a kid isn't smart enough to figure out they're not reading. So the parents will come in, they'll say, like, please don't tell them it's tutoring. I'm like, what am I supposed to tell them? You know, like, I don't know what you want me to say. But kids are smart, right? And they know. So even 5 years old, this kid comes in, he sits down, I said, so, you know, why are you here? And he like looks around, it's just he and I, and he goes, don't tell my mom, but I can't read. And I said, why don't you want me to tell your mom? And he's like, because she thinks I can. And I said, why does she think you can? Because he goes, I'll read things and I know it's not right. And she's like, great job. And I'm like, it broke my heart, because he's worried about her feelings, right? Because, you know, she's working so hard to cheer him up. But that does not work, right? Because if someone followed me around all day saying, you can be a supermodel, by the end of the day, I'd probably agree with them just to get them the hell away from me, all right? But I'm not going to go try out for the swimsuit edition of Sports Illustrated, right? So just telling me something isn't going to help, right? They have to experience real success. And real success happens when you give them real feedback, okay? So real feedback is honest feedback, you know? And when we give kids ridiculous feedback, we get ridiculous behavior, right? So we are in control of the behavior we see from kids. Sometimes we're getting some remnants of the teacher before us, because she was probably a bitch, but that's okay, because we're going to take over, and we're going to fix that. It might take us a little longer, right? But once they start feeling successful, then they start trusting you. Once they start trusting you, then they'll start doing things for you. Then pretty soon, you have free child labor, right? They're willing to do all kinds of stuff for you. And child labor is illegal as long as you don't pay them, right? So if you've got some things you need sorted, you know, they think they're helping, they're actually sorting. I want you to sort these into consonants and vowels. I want you to do, so I'm giving them something they can feel successful at. And I am telling you, I have had kids where I had to dig deep. I'm like, that was amazing the way you blinked. I was just like, wow. I'm like, there's got to be something this kid can do. He's driving crazy. But you know, if you can get them to feel successful, then half your battle is won. So people are like, but I have to get through these standards. Well, you're never going to get through those standards unless you go back and make them successful and fill in the things that they don't have. So when I was in 11th grade teaching, I was supposed to teach biology, geography, study skills, 11th lit, government. I had 5 preps my first year, and a cart. Hallelujah. Okay? It can only get better from there, let me tell you. Okay? So if you are an administrator, who's an administrator in here? You afraid to raise your hand? Okay. If you're an administrator, start people out with the cart. Okay? Don't give them a room and then a cart. You want to, like, build them up, okay? So, yeah, I had a cart and then I had a trailer. I was in a trailer. Man, I love the trailer. No one comes out there. It's awesome. Do whatever you want. We had a stray dog for a while. No one even knew. So don't ditch the trailers. It's not as bad. Her name was Emma. She was half pit bull, half lab. We did eventually find her a home, but she was sweet. Okay, so so we want to make sure that they feel successful. Okay, and this is going to lower their stress level, right? Okay, so, you know, they're like, oh, Jennifer, you're going to be speaking in front of 500 people. I was like, ugh. right? Because I'm like, try to do things where I can see people's faces. I'm like, could you lower the lights? Because if I can't see your faces, I can't talk. Because I just am like, I have no idea what I'm doing, right? So don't ask me to do a webinar. Because then I'm like trying to talk to myself and I look ridiculous. But when you have kids who can do these, do the most basic of skills, and they build it up, then what's going to happen is they're going to be willing to do anything for you, right? And I had, in 11th grade, my high school kids, I would have them dancing, playing games, all kinds of hand movements. They would do ridiculous things for me as long as I had construction paper over the window. Because they knew that I wasn't going to humiliate them, that if they made a mistake, it was not a big deal, that I was more likely to be the one to make the mistake than they were, because I was making them all the time, because I was on a provisional certificate teaching reading. Okay? So that means I was going to go to law school because I looked good in suits, and I wanted to date Jimmy Smits. And then I worked at a law firm, and I thought, I'd rather shoot myself than do this. Just because I argue well, which most people know, doesn't mean I'm going to be a lawyer. So then I said, oh, I'll be a teacher till I figure out my life, okay? And so I got the first job that was offered me, because I was like, I'll do high school. I love to travel, so I'll do geography and world history. I love that, right? Well, I wasn't a football coach, so I didn't get a job. And so I got put into, it is so true, I got put into special ed, high school behavior disorders, and I thought I'd beat out the thousands of applicants, right? And it was probably my suit, right? So little did I know, no one else wanted it. I was on provisional. They waved their magic wand. They said, you are now certified to teach special ed, 3 years old through 12th grade. And I said, wow, I felt this wave of knowledge just pour over me. No. So I started teaching, and of course I was like 22, 23, and I knew so much more than I do now. I was so smart. And so I was enthusiastic, which is good. I love the kids. I worked really hard, really hard, teaching them to read, because I realized they couldn't. So I said, I'm going to teach you how to read. And my first year, I should send them a note of apology, because I didn't do a very good job, but they couldn't read it anyway, so it wouldn't matter. Because what I realized is I didn't know how to teach reading. I didn't know what, the kids would be like, why is city sound like an S, and we heard why sounded like yeah. Why is it not kit ya? I'm like, I don't know. I really don't know. It just is, and so they weren't feeling successful because they didn't understand, but they saw that I didn't know either, and I got some buy-in, and I said, I'll figure it out for you, okay? Because they also need to experience success, but they also need to realize teachers are not all-knowing. No one is all-knowing. If they're expecting to go to school, a school of education, and come out all-knowing, they're going to be sorely disappointed, right? So you want them to experience the success, but you also want them to experience how to figure out the problems when they arise. Go look it up, right? So there are some things where I'll say, words in English, they don't end in U. They're not supposed to. So there's going to be an E at the end, right? Or if you're it's an A, and I explain all of that. And if they're in 11th grade, we talk about Latin noun markers and all that. And if they're in kindergarten, I just tell them the basics, right? So then they'll say, well, what about menu? And I'll go, I think that's French. I said, let's look it up. I'm not sure, right? Because let's look it up. And the thing is, I've probably looked up the same word 50 times, but I forget, because when a kid doesn't ask it for a year, I forgot, so I don't make it up. But I actually met a teacher who, when she goes, well, I just tell them, when I don't know what it is, that it's just French. And I said, they're going to go to France, and they're going to be like, comme was should? No idea. If there's no spelling rule, it must be French. So I'm like, I would recommend against that. But with the kids now, back then, I hate to say how old I am, but back then, the internet was not a reliable source of anything. And, you couldn't find information. So, I had to work backwards and find out patterns, okay? But then the kids felt more successful, and so what I realized is that it wasn't a big deal that I didn't know, right? And, the good thing was I was cursing a lot, but they had behavior disorders, so no one believed them. And so it all worked out. And, I'm like, that word has CK at the end, and I know why now, because it is a single vowel, and that's why. So, quit spelling it wrong. So don't worry about not knowing, is what I'm saying. Help them get there, okay? Because even this morning, or yesterday morning, the people at IDA, yes, you, I see you if you're videotaping me, people at IDA, they were taking bets on whether I'd fall off the stage or not. Yep. And they said, how much would you pay for a copy of the video not to be released if you do fall off? And I said, wait till I fall off, and then I'll know how much it's worth. So I'm like, but I'm used to embarrassing myself, so it's all good. Now, if something's really important, we need to repeat it. We need to repeat it, repeat it, repeat it, and then we need to repeat it again, okay? So things are important. We should make a really big deal about them, but for some reason, we repeat ridiculous things in school, and then we do it every flippin' year, okay? So we talk about Christopher Columbus, right? In the early grades, we talk about Christopher Columbus, and we talk about how he sailed the ocean blue in 1492. Awesome. So glad you guys learned that rhyme, aren't you? Comes in handy all the time, right? Jimmy Kimmel gets you on the street corner. When did Columbus land? 1492, right? So then you learn about it every year. We have Columbus Day. We still celebrate. He discovered America and all these people, right? There are millions of people in the Americas, but he discovered it. Okay, I just wanted to let you guys know that I walked into this conference and I saw you all here, and I have discovered dyslexia. So I want you to know I'm here, and I know about dyslexia now. So I will tell you guys all about it, right? That's ridiculous. So we teach these ridiculous things, and not only do we teach it in kindergarten, we teach it in first grade, and second grade, and third grade. Then we get like a bank holiday. Banks aren't closed. Banks are closed because of Christopher Columbus Day. He raped, murdered, plundered, killed people. He's an awesome dude, right? And so it's funny. I'm not going to say because one of the teachers from the school that I was visiting is here, so don't look at her. But when I was there, I used this example when I'm training, and she goes, and I said, like, for Christopher Columbus, I said, we get all the way to high school, and we start, because in high school, kids are so bored with the same stuff over and over again, and they've just been peed on, they're drenched, so they're just like, you have to talk about, well, people died, and you threw them overboard, and then they only ate pickles, and you have to shock them in order to get them to pay attention, so it has to be, like, really gruesome by high school, or they're all in a coma. And so, why do we continue to do this when we stop teaching reading in second grade? And so there were, and sometimes first grade, in some of the schools I work with. But one of the teachers at that school, she goes, oh no, what we're doing is another school is coming over to talk to our kids about, because I was there on Columbus Day, and to come talk to our little ones about Columbus Day today, in Spanish. They're going to speak in Spanish to them. I was like, he's Italian. I was like, I'm so confused. And then they just nodded. And I was like, I'm sorry. I don't know what else to say. But pause for a second and think, But I learned how to teach in a room full of hecklers. Because when kids have behavior disorders, they're like, that doesn't make any sense. Because they're not stupid, right? They're definitely not stupid, okay? They're just having difficulty learning how to read, and you're telling them ridiculous things like, two vowels go walking, first one does the talking. And then they say, what about oi? And you're like, except for that one. And what about ooh? And not that. And what about ow? And then you're like, shut the hell up. No. So then you realize I'm telling them this is a rule that 90% of the time there are exceptions. That would be like saying when you see a red light, go super fast. You know, it makes absolutely no sense. So these kids are smart. This isn't making any sense to me. You know, this woman is obviously an idiot. So they tune out, you know, because why would they listen, right? The natural readers are just going to nod. Yeah, whatever you say, I could read it anyway. Okay? I was going to do fine. Okay? You want to call the basketball baseball? Mom, Michael Jordan. I don't care. I'll be fine. Okay? I'll play both sports, but I'll suck at one. So repetition of what's important matters. Okay? But we'll say, oh, well, I did that for a week last year. Right? So if you have children, I'm sure you remember the 1 week of chew with your mouth closed, right? And then it was done. You didn't have to teach them about it ever again. You were like, awesome, next week it's going to be clean your room, right? If we need to review next year, we'll have clean your room week again, just in case you didn't catch on to it the week we did it last year. So why do we think that we can say this is our rule of the week? And it's going to stick. If it's important, because my students all want it to be rappers. You know, they're 11th grade, they're cool, they're bad, they want to be rappers, right? But they forget the second P, and it's all downhill from there. I'm like, do you not think the doubling rule would have been great? There's less prison time, you make more money, it's way better, right? Right? But our kids, they don't know whether they're hopping or hoping. Are you hoping to be a rapper or are you hopping to be a raper? I don't know. I don't know what's going on. You know, but you got that in first grade, and the teachers say they should have learned that in first grade, right? Yeah, well, they should have, but they didn't, so whose job is it now, right? And if you don't take on that role, I personally call that education malpractice. Occasionally, I get really mad and say it to a teacher's face, and then I'm not allowed back in the school. Okay? But most of the time, I control myself. Okay? But it is the teacher's responsibility, and I don't think that's a bad thing. I think that's a great thing. I think it makes us powerful, and it makes us capable of change and changing kids' lives. And if we go back to what they need, that's what they need, right? As a parent, you're not going to say, I fed my kid vegetables last year. It's all chocolate cake here. You know, and teachers are like, we're just going to do comprehension. I'm like, yeah, chocolate cake here. You know, we're gonna make dioramas. Because like I was, you know, interviewing for a job, I was thinking maybe I'll go like work in sales. So I brought in my diorama. And I was like, this is what I would do if I was in sales. I went, okay. So these things are super important. We've got to get those important things in. And we're always talking about standards, right? You know, like you can't do any of the standards if you can't read them. Right? So we need to go back. We need to be advocates for our kids. We need to repeat. And when you're frustrated with your peers, it's the same thing. Repeat it again. Take them out for a glass of wine. Talk about how wine is bridgy, sneaky, magic-y, whatever you want. Right? The origin of Pinot. French, right? Right? You have the power also to influence your administration. But the thing about it is we get upset because we know what's right and we want them to do it, okay? Does that ever work with you? Like when someone comes up to you and they're like, they have a certain religion or a certain thing they like, and they come up and they're like, you don't know what you're doing? You have to go to my church. You are an idiot. Does that like make you like jump right on board? No, right? So we just have to advocate, but in a nice way, right? For our kids and towards administration, because teachers, when they see good things happening, they want to emulate it, and then they want to learn from you. Then they want to do the same thing you're doing. So be a positive role model for teachers as well. Because administrators, sometimes I've known administrators that one year they were a first grade teacher, the next year they were a principal. Okay, so where in that year did they get the training on how to manage people, which by the way is the hardest flipping job on the planet, because people are really annoying, okay? So managing 100 people in a building, then they have multi-million-dollar budgets. They were managing 23 first graders the year before. Right? They're struggling too. But their boss is saying, don't show weakness, pretend you know. You now know all special ed law. Really? Oh crap. Okay? Because they got the magic wand and it didn't work either, because mine didn't work. It did not magically. So support them as well, because being an administrator is the crappiest job on the planet. So I only had one hand go up. Does anyone want to raise their hand now? Because there's not enough money for me to ever be an administrator. Okay? Because they get doo-dooed on from above, they get doo-dooed on from below. There is nothing good about that. So we can really affect change, and that's through repetition as well. So we just have to really stop and think about it, because our frustration is a lack of tools. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay? And frustration doesn't help anybody. Okay? All right, so repetition is important, and pick what's important, because there's one, what's cool, I know, and it's always really funny, because when I do this, like I accidentally insult people because I don't know you all. And I'll say things like, oh, I was at this school where they had this giant wedding for Q and U. They dressed up in like dresses, and they had, the whole school was involved, and Q and U got married, and they had to be together all the time, and there was a big wedding for them. And I was like, they took like a whole day of instruction in the planning in advance, and people were wearing crowns, and it was like this huge thing. And then I said, well, why don't you just say, when you see QU, it says Qu, and when you need to spell it, you hear Qu, right, QU. And they're like, oh. What is the wedding? What does it matter? You know what I'm saying? Like, once they're married, what are you going to explain to a kid? What happens on wedding night? I don't know. The kids are a little freaked out. Like, do they have to kiss? Or does the Q's thingy now get to go in the U's thingy? I don't know. Okay, so I'm assuming you're all over 18. So people are like, she works with children? Yeah, I do. I really can tailor my language, but I'm not the best kindergarten teacher, just saying. It's like herding cats. I did it for 8 weeks, hardest 8 weeks of my life. So if you teach kindergarten, so make it multisensory, okay? So CARS is all about chunking information, allowing for success, repeating what's important, and keep repeating it, and then repeat it again, and then repeat it again, okay? So, and then sensory, you'll have to repeat it less if you make it multisensory, okay? So that's not just visual, auditory, kinesthetic, and tactile, right? There's all those things. But visual auditory is what we're doing, right? Visual auditory, right? It's not the best way, because you're going to lose kids' attention, they're not moving. But you want to get them up, you want to get them moving, and you don't have to be the one doing it. Like sometimes the teachers are like, I don't want to do that. You know, I'm like, well then don't. Just sit there and tell them to do it. They're happy to jump up and down and do stuff while you tell them to do it, okay? Having kids quiet and sitting in a seat, that doesn't mean they're learning, right? It means they're quiet and they're sitting in a seat, okay? And the other thing that's super important is for them to be expressive, because if you can explain it to somebody, then you know it, right? Taking a test is not indicative of knowing it, because I work with teachers who have degrees in education, okay? And then I'm like, do you know your sounds? You know, like B and R, and they're like, burr. I'm like, no. You know, I'm like, that would be like burden. How could it be burr? You know, and then they'll say, what about GR? And they're like, grr. I'm like, no. So, you know, you can't make that assumption if they're just sitting there receiving information. You don't know. Okay, so you want to make sure that they're expressive. So the way I do homework, I call it home fun, and it's because it psychologically makes it more fun. And so I'll say, okay, this is what your home fun is. Tonight you have to go home and explain whatever concept it is that we learned. Then the parents, I had them fill out a Likert scale saying my child was able to tell me what this concept was, and then they have a frowny face, you know, like a straight line face and a smiley face. Because what happens is, when you have a sliding scale like that, people automatically stop and think. Or they go all down one side, and then the next week what you do is you flip your icons so that it's like you've got the frowny face over here and the And then the parents are like, I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so worried about them. They failed everything. And then they're like, oh. So then they pay attention the next time, okay? But what happens is, if parents have to stop and do any analysis on what their kid is doing, then they're paying attention. They're cognitively understanding. Because you know how many parents come to us and say, you know, he reads Harry Potter. And I'm like, he can't read cat. And they're like, no, he sits in the corner with the book. I'm like, is it right side up? You know, because I am not thinking he's reading that, right? Because we've got a lot of parents who don't really understand what reading is, how to prove that they're really reading. They've memorized a book, so now they're readers. So this way, it makes them really understand it. And if the parents need to understand it, they ask more questions. So they'll ask their kid more questions. And if their kid gets asked more questions, they get more practice being expressive. I mean, I've followed kids around during the day, and I've seen kids that have not uttered a single word. And when you talk to the teachers, they didn't even know. And I'm not blaming the teachers, but it's hard to keep track. But most responses come from like 2 or 3 kids in the room. The other ones are half paying attention or picking their nose or who knows what they're doing. But they're not engaged. So we want to make sure that they're engaged, that there's something that we can see, that we know that they're doing it. But the other thing is, we don't really want to work that hard, right? Why do we want to overwork? That makes no sense, right? If you can drive your car, wouldn't you choose to drive it rather than push it, right? And get to the destination, right? So if we're more efficient in what we're doing, then our kids are going to get that information. They're going to be happier. We're going to be happier. There's going to be less frustration. So we want to make sure that they're moving and that they're expressive, okay? So we're going to do a couple activities. So you're going to have a partner, okay? Find a partner. You don't have to spend the rest of your life with them, just like 30 seconds. Okay? All right. Does anyone not have a partner? Because someone's mean? It's always a mean girl. Okay. Does everyone know who their partner is? Okay, raise your hand if you don't have a partner. You done at the end? Okay. You don't have a partner? Move in. Look at that. Look how awesome we are. We're getting partners. They don't have to be your friend. They could be your new friend. They don't need partners. They've been to my training 10 times. Okay, so I'm like, why are you guys here? I'm like, I don't know. Okay, so they're playing some game on their phone. Okay, so now what we're going to do is, you guys heard of Teach OK, whole brain teaching? Okay, so I really like whole brain teaching, as long as you don't do the reading stuff, okay? Because they're really good at managing behavior in a positive way, which I really like. And I tell new teachers, look at their videos, because it makes your life easier and you're going to be a happier person, okay? So whole brain teaching has an activity called Teach OK. And so what Teach OK is you're going to have a partner, and what you're going to do is, I'm going to say whatever I want you to do, which right now what I'm going to want you to do is talk about what you learned with pee, do, and cars, okay? Look at your partner, whoever's closer to that wall is going first, okay? Okay, then we'll switch, and the other person on the other side is going to go next. And this is all you're going to do, is you're just going to listen to them talk about what they gleaned from those 3 concepts, okay? And so what happens is, I will say teach, so I'll go teach, and you guys will go okay. Ready? Teach. That was really good. You guys are so smart. Okay. So then I'm going to go switch, and you guys are going to go, okay, fabulous, okay? Then when I want you to come back, I'm just going to say class, which is like their basic attention getter, okay? So are you guys ready? Everyone knows who's the talker, okay, and who's the listener? The listener does not interrupt. They sit quietly, okay? And they listen. When it's their turn, they could clarify something for the other person. The other person still says nothing, okay? They're just listening, okay? All right. Teach. Okay, so what I did there, does anyone want to like debrief? Tell me what I just did. What did I do? Okay, what she said is, I saw whether you knew how to explain it, right? Heck no, I can't even hear you from here. What I did was drank half a bottle of water, checked to see if I got any hits on my match profile, and wandered around for a minute, all right? I did not fall off the stage, I know. But if I were in a smaller classroom, I would have been able to hear, right? But this is the other thing. I've been able to start making a transfer into memory, okay? Because you hear something, you hear it once. You know, someone might say, oh, how was that talk this morning? Oh, it was really good. What did they say? I don't remember, but it was good. I liked it. It was good, right? But you're more likely to know what I talked about now because, one, you listened to somebody, right? And then you're probably going, this woman was not paying attention, I could tell, right? Or whatever you're thinking. Then you switch, and you got to talk about it and obviously correct the other person, okay, with whatever they were thinking. But this is what happens in a classroom, is when I start doing this in class, we do it for 5 seconds at a time, right? Because kids cannot not interrupt. So I start, neither can I, but I'm medicated and they're not, because they won't let me put that Ritalin salt lick I want on the wall. So I have, I know, all these rules. So they start them off, you know, so I'm not frustrated. Why would I say, let's do this for 30 seconds when it's not going to be possible, and then yell at them, right? I want to work up to 5 seconds each, 10 seconds each, you know, then we'll work to where you can have dialogue. Kids do not listen. They do not listen to each other. They do not listen to their parents. Their parents do not listen to them, okay? We used to come in to school being able to sit still, right? Because when we were young, there were no iPads, right? There were no iPhones. And we went to restaurants, they didn't even have crayons, okay? Like there were dinosaurs roaming around outside, okay? But we had to sit in our seat. We weren't even allowed to stab our sisters with forks. There was nothing we were allowed to do. We just had to sit there, right? And then at the end of the meal, the server would come by and she would say, would you like coffee? And in my head, I would say, please, no coffee. No coffee. And then she'd say, coffee. And I'm like, God, 15 more minutes sitting here, right? So we had to sit and we had to wait and we had to stay at the table before, and we had to be excused, and I had to answer the phone because my maiden name is Afford, like I can't afford anything. I was so excited when I got Hasser because people were like, oh, can I afford you? And I'm like, no, you can't, but it's Afford. So I'd have to say, Afford residence, Jennifer speaking, may I help you, when I answered the phone, right? My kids don't even have voicemail. Like, I'm like, could you put something on there like, this is Claire's phone? No, I get, this is the number, right? They don't have to do any of those things. All those things require working memory, and working memory is a muscle. So we've got these kids, their muscles are underdeveloped, and they're coming in and they can't hold information. So we can complain about it, you know, but complaining doesn't actually change anything, right? Or we can change it and get them ready to read. So people are like, well, are you going to talk about reading? Well, I'm sorry, but if you can't hold anything in your working memory, you can't read. Right? And there are teachers all over the world. They go, I don't understand. He goes, but, and then I say, blend it, and he goes, butterfly. And I'm like, it's a mystery to me. Like, he can't hold it long enough, because, you know, but he knows all of his sounds. I'm like, I know all the yoga poses, but I've never tried them, you know? So I can't apply it. So we've got these kids who can't hold it long enough to blend it, and then the teachers will say, oh, well, we're just going to go to the flashcard method. Because their memory is such crap, they can't hold 3 sounds. We're going to start memorizing 1,000,000 words. That'll work, right? So if we're going to get them to be better readers, we have to work on prerequisite skills. I mean, if you're a basketball coach, you're not like saying, oh, wear your prom dress and 4-inch heels. That's going to be great. They're going to say you have to be well-equipped. You know, if you're running out of steam at halftime, they're going to say you need to get better sleep, you need to eat better, you need to be running, you need to build your endurance. You're going to do all these prerequisite things. And so reading has prerequisite skills because it's not a natural thing. It's not, you know, you don't start reading from birth. You know, it's not developmental. It's man-made. You don't grow into it if somebody isn't going to help you along the way. You're going to have the same population that's natural as the same population that's naturally good at basketball or naturally good at any man-made activity. But since we need it, we need to build up those prerequisites, right? So if you're doing this along with your instruction, you're getting that instruction cemented and you're building up working memory capacity. And you get to stop and take a drink, maybe check a text as they start being able to hold it longer, right? You're wandering around, they're doing all the teaching, you're just chill, getting paid for it. They're doing all the labor, right? But that expressive, and then they have their friend correcting them or giving input or jogging their memory. Do you see what I'm saying? See how we're building capacity? And then pretty soon they can start doing this for extended periods of time. And then you've got kids who can now follow multi-step directions. Okay? Because kids who can't follow multi-step directions, they have no working memory, right? So you can't follow multi-step directions, how are you going to comprehend a story? Because we've got those kids who they read, and you're like, I think it just went in one ear and out the other. Like, what was that about? They're like, I don't know. Because they can't hold it long enough to create a mental image. Even if they could decode it, it's not overlearned, and they have no memory capacity to hold on to it. So it's just like anything, everybody has a different capacity for memory, but why can't we make, you know, a kid who has a poor working memory, an average working memory, an average, a little bit above average, but above average even better. So it's not just about our low kids. Why can't we make our higher kids better? You know, so just because you're good doesn't mean you can't be gooder. That's my motto, okay? So, you know, we want to take all kids that way, and it is going to work that way if you start infusing these types of activities. Do you see what I'm saying? So it could be that they're doing, say, as many sounds as you can in this period of time. Explain the difference to your friend between, you know, a single consonant and a consonant digraph. And what's the difference between a digraph and a blend, right? Is that not comprehension? That's comprehension. Why does it always have to be a story? You know, they think comprehension is always a story. And I'm like, no, comprehension is everything, right? Go get your pencil out of your book bag. They come back with like a blender, you're like, what? Right? We got a comprehension problem, right? So we need to make sure, because we tell these kids 3 things and then they come back with 1 or they forget what they were doing and then we get mad at them, right? So we're really punishing them for being in a cast with an eye patch on their eye and saying, why don't you try harder? So we have to meet them where they are and then build them back up, okay? And so do you think you're more likely now to remember these 3 things just because you talked about it for 30 seconds to one another? Okay. What other reasons might you remember? I repeated it, okay, a lot of times. What else did I do? I chunked it. Yep. Humor? Well, some people think I'm funny. My kids don't. Yeah, they're like, my mom thinks she's funny. I'm like, I am. I laugh all the time at myself. So, because they're like, why do you laugh at your jokes? I'm like, well, why would I say it if I didn't think it was funny? I don't understand that. Of course I think it's funny. So we have pee, doo-doo, and cars. What are those? Mnemonics, right? Hey, why did I use pee and doo-doo? Because lots of people have told me that it's not appropriate. I chunked them, but I also made it not appropriate, right? So that it would stick. Because, you know, when we're doing this activity, I have you guys for an hour and a half. You're seeing tons of different presenters. The rooms all look the same. You know, you're sitting in the same chairs. It all starts to blend together, right? So I think this information is extremely valuable. And I think you should hold on to it long enough to be able to use it. Because if you go to a conference and you go back to doing the same old thing, all you did was waste taxpayer money or your own money or your husband's money or whatever. But if you just came here to shop, there's great malls. So that's fine too, all right? But I would prefer that you go back and use it. And if you can't remember what it was, or you're like, I could look back through my notes to see if I can figure out what that was, then it's not going to be valuable to you. Do you see what I'm saying? And it's the same way with kids. So if it's important, repeat it. So I have all of your personal cell numbers. I'll be calling you all on Monday to repeat it again. I'm just kidding. I'll send you a text. But that's what you have to do with kids. If it's important, that could be an anchor chart. Because am I telling you the answer? No. I would just be reminding you of what you've learned. Okay? So with kids, I don't say, they're like, does that have 2 P's or 1? I'm like, well, what are you trying to say? Like, I want to say hopping. I said, well, then why would you need 2 P's? You know, I want them to tell me, well, I need that P because I have to protect that vowel, otherwise it's going to have to say its name. You know, and they need to know why. Not just memorize, regurgitate, or I'm just peeing on them. Right? And then you don't get cool Starbucks gift cards for Christmas, you get Depends. Okay? So you don't want to do that. Okay. So that is the end of my PowerPoint presentation, because I hate PowerPoint because I thought it was really cutting edge in 91. Okay? But we still have more to do, so I need some volunteers. Okay? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait, is someone over here? Do we have a boy? Anywhere? A boy? Single? Late 40s, early 50s is mine. Okay. No? Okay. Another girl. Okay. I like that enthusiasm. Come on up. Don't know why this chair is here. Yep, come on the stage. Yeah. Because what I bet the staff this morning is that you're falling off, not me. Okay, so form a line behind me going that way. I'm modeling this, right? See, modeling behind me. Very good. Okay. And then she goes, oh, you mean behind you? I'm like,
there's 2 different. Could be that way or
no, because I'm this way and this is my behind. Okay, so now what we're going to be doing is we're going to be working on phonics without actually dealing with phonics. Okay, so because your prerequisite skills, if they're not intact, phonics just doesn't stick, right? Because there are lots of people who are like, you know, I did that rule, they just don't know it. We went over all our sounds, they have no idea, you know. Okay, so we're going to be working on memory, plus we're actually moving around so that they get up and they get some exercise, right? So what I'm going to do is they're going to be sounds, okay, and I call this the people mover, and it's really just phony manipulation, right? So I'm going to call in a sound, okay, and you're going to be ah, so come on in, okay, and you have to face this way, right? So this is ah. Now, she's 5, okay, we're just pretending you're 5. Okay. Don't be insulted. So this is ah. And because she's 5, she's right now going, I'm in her head, right? Right? Because she's like, I don't want to forget. And she's also knows she's now in front of 500 people, so she's going, yeah, I'm in her head. So if this is and I want to make it at, I would have t. So I need a t to come in. And we want to go this way. Does anyone know why we want to go this way, face this way? Right, so in their visual memory, their little mental chalkboard, dry erase board, iPad, whatever screen you want to visualize, they are reading the correct directionality, okay? So now I have at. Now because, you know, if in the beginning, they're like, what am I? And what am I will say what they are, and I tap them, and I say what it's changing to, okay? Because sometimes she might not be hearing at. She might still be going, So if I say, this is at, and I'm going to change it to it, then I would have at, it. So she now would go, wait, it was it. So I must have changed. I go back to the end of the line, and it comes in. See, I'm like helping them with their working memory? Okay. So now I have at. If this is at and I want it to make it sat, I'm going to keep repeating while they're learning. So I'm going to say we have See, I know, it's bad. The kids help me with my memory too, because they won't give me the Ritalin Salt Lick. Okay, so we have it, right? Okay, so we're going to make it et. How's that? So we have it, and we're going to make it et. So who changed? She changed. She's going to come in. Okay, so if this is et, let's make it set. Okay, so we have et. I know you're smart, but you got to wait. Okay, et, and then now it's et. Okay, because the kids, if they're nervous, what happens when you're nervous? You forget, right? You forget. Because we know so much about the brain, which is so awesome right now. We're like in the best time ever for teachers because we have all these people with Alzheimer's they're studying. And since there's so many old people, we're learning so much about memory. And it's helping us to teach kids. I mean, it's really true. There's so much funding going into the brain, and there's so many things that we're learning. Because if you have anxiety, because you know your butt is out here the rest of the world looking at it, then your memory, didn't mean to cause attention, then your memory might not work because you're being flooded with chemicals, right? Because it's causing you anxiety. And when you have that fight or flight response, what happens? You forget things. That's why people block out moments before a crash. They don't remember anything that happened, or their horrible childhood, because those chemicals are there to protect you. It's fight or flight. So we want to keep those chemicals down. We want them to experience success so that they trust, so that the next time they will do more. Do you see what I'm saying? And we are also hoping they remember it's set, right? Okay, good. So if this is set, we're going to make it sets. So we have et, and we're going to make it sets. Et, s. So as they start, where they can start doing it, because some of my little ones, this could take months to get them like going and holding on to 3 sounds, 2 sounds. Sometimes I'm doing it to at. Sometimes I'm just hoping they can understand that we're doing letters, sounds, and stuff like that. So if I have sets and I want it to make it sits, now hopefully I can not tap because they now have been doing this for a while. Okay, so I have sits. So you're going to come back in. When you left, you became nothing again. I mean, not personally nothing, but you're like not anything. Okay. So, sorry, self-esteem plummeted. Okay, so when you leave, you're no longer a sound. Okay, and then when you come back in, you're just going to be whatever sound needs to be replaced. Okay? So now we have sits. So let's make it slits. Slits. Look at that. They're so smart. If that's slits, let's make it slit. Now we have slit. Okay, if that's slit, let's make it slut. Now you can come. Okay, so you want to make it sluts, and we'll just be done. Okay, so awesome job. You're the only non-slut. Great job. All right, you get a prize. Okay, I'll give you the good prize. Chocolate and a magic wand. The magic wand doesn't really work. Come here. Well, it's a glow stick wand.
Oh, okay. That works.
I got it at the after Halloween sale. Teacher's best friend. After Christmas, after Halloween. You're welcome. Okay, and you get what you get and you don't pitch a fit, okay? Okay? Because in Georgia, get and fit rhyme. Did you know that? It does. Like, when my kids were in preschool, that was like the thing. She'd say get and fit. I'm like, that doesn't rhyme. But Miss Shirley, she could make milk 2 syllables. She was like, milk. And my kids came home asking for milk, and I said, not until it's 1 syllable again. We are not doing this. Okay? So, yeah. Miss Shirley, she was also very scared of my dyslexic daughter because she did things backwards and She was very worried about her, and I was like so excited. I'm like, yay, she could have something I know nothing about. Luckily, she has dyslexia. So, because I was president of the International Dyslexia Association of Georgia at the time she was diagnosed, and everyone's like, that how you got into this? I'm like, oh yeah, overnight. Diagnosis, straight to president. But who knew? Okay, so our next activity, okay, put your hands up if I throw a ball towards you, okay? If it bounces off your face, people laugh, okay? Are you ready? I totally warned you. See, I take no responsibility. For that, I give you the finger. Okay? This is what you get at the after Halloween sale. Okay, will you pass the finger to her? It's bubbles. I'm not throwing it at her. However, I do have insurance, so she sues me. Okay, so let's try to get a ball way over there. Will you toss it further? I don't know where it went or who it hit, but it wasn't me that threw it. That's all I'm saying. Okay, you guys over here? Here you go. I don't want to be the one to throw it. Okay, and then we need one to go way over there so we can spread them out. Okay, so now what happens also with memory that is really cool, seriously again? You know, I think I'm riveting. You people need to pay attention. Okay, so what happens with kids is that when there is any type of excitement, right, that creates adrenaline, because kids like to have fun. They like to do something with adrenaline. So I use my fun activities as bribes, right? Some people prefer the term incentives, okay? It sounds nicer, right? But we all know we're just bribing them to get through the worksheet stuff that has to get done, and then we will bribe them or incentivize them with fun stuff. But the thing about fun stuff that's really cool is that if it's novel, if you have, you know, your people like novelty, but they also like repetition. So if you have repetition, then kids feel safe, right? You want to know that when you go home at night, your house is going to be there, right? You don't want to go home and be like, oh my gosh, I have to move the house tonight. Where am I going to sleep, right? That would be bad. That'd cause anxiety. So you like to have the comfort of knowing that that's going to happen. But it would be nice to come home and there's dinner on the table and flowers, and that would be novel, right? So that would be good, okay? Right? So we want to create that kind of environment where our kids feel safe, you know, and they're going to know that they have to do the work, but then you can create that novelty because your brain is going to attach to it. And so you will remember more if you're having a good time, okay? Because if you're having a bad time, you're just counting down the minutes. So you want the kids to kind of be enjoying themselves, especially if it's something important. And a lot of times in schools, what do you remember from elementary school? They remember dressing up as a pilgrim or making their pilgrim hat or something, you know, but they don't remember any spelling rules. You know, they don't remember anything of consequence. So pair something important with something fun instead of doing something boring and then get to do something unrelated. Do you see what I'm saying? Okay. So there's always some type of, you know, phonics component, something snuck in, sneak attack. They never know. They're still having fun. But what I do with the beach ball is I'm going to want you guys to toss it to somebody. You can make eye contact so they have it. So toss it to somebody if you have a beach ball. And whoever gets it, okay, I want you to tell me what word your left thumb landed on. Okay, do. Okay, can you use it in a sentence for me? Do you want me to throw the beach ball again? Excellent. So now you can find someone to give it to, and I want you to say to them, spell do. Excellent. So do you see what's happening? Like, she's reading it, so it's receptive. Using it in a sentence, because it could be, I saw dew on the grass, right? versus do you want me to throw the ball? Okay? So then, now you're going to tell me what's in your left hand, left thumb, mother. Okay, so what was the last word? And this word is? Use them both in a sentence. Do you know my mother? Okay, so they're both doing questions. So with my kids, I'll say it has to be a statement or a question or whatever I'm working on, because you can work on, these are all criminal words in there, so the ones that don't follow the rules, right? So I'm going to be working on getting those into memory. So now, who wants to get the ball from her? Look around and see who wants to get the ball next. Okay, anybody who puts their arms up? There you go. Oh, she didn't put her arms up. I'm going for a volunteer. Do you want to do it or no? Okay, there's someone with their arms up. There you go. So now, where'd your left thumb hit? Come? Okay. She's old, so I don't know if she can remember all this. I've known her for 20 years. I'm just kidding. So what was our first word? It was do. What was our second word? Mother. What is our third word? Come. Yeah. Can you, see, I told you she was old. Okay, so can you use those all in a sentence? Or a question? I'm going to say yes, but no curse words on the end of mother. Do mothers like to come to conferences? Okay, so see if you can toss it to somebody else. Okay, where did your thumb land? What? What was your first word? Second? Third? And now you have? Can you use those all in a sentence? Awesome. So what I want you to see is that we can, how many of you are trying to remember the words that we heard? Right? So if you've got a group of kids, they're all trying really hard to remember them, and they're trying to arrange them into a sentence, and then they're like, no, you didn't say do, you forgot this. But we're also asking them to spell it and read it, and we're giving them the opportunity to hold on to things. So a lot of times we just are doing this recall thing, like how do you spell do? D-O. How do you spell cat? C-A-T. How do you do that? We're not holding on to anything longer than, one request. And teachers will say that's because they can't hold it any longer. And so we lower our expectations to what they can do. And so what's happening is we get these kids coming in, and I'm telling you, I do the C-top on thousands of kids, and I've done it for 20 years. And I always take the kid in classes, and I'll say the bottom third is red, the middle third is black, and the top is green, right? And so, I used to have, the 30% mark was the bottom third, right? Well, now 70% of my kids are below 30% on working memory. I mean, is it the water? Right? Like, what's causing this? Their attention span, even Sesame Street is cutting the length of time that segments go. They can't try to get kids in middle school to watch an 80s movie. They can't do it because there's a buildup. If it doesn't start with 50 death sequences in the first scene, they have no attention span for it. They're like, when does it start? Like, when does it get going? I'm like, well, we're developing characters. They're like, what are those? Okay? So as teachers, we have to take responsibility for this. We can complain about it, but if we don't start doing some things, do you see how, like, what I'm showing you can build capacity? If you're conscious of it, if you're aware of it, if you take your activities and make sure that you build them, and it has to be repetitive. That's why I'm saying CARS is so important, because you can't say, oh, well, I did a memory activity the third and fourth Tuesday of the month, and then that's all I've done, okay? Because I worked out twice this year, okay? And I diet every day till 11:30, and then I get hungry. But if somebody said to me, did you diet? Have you been dieting? Why aren't you losing weight? Well, I diet every day till 11:30. I'm dieting every day. Do you see how we have to be more thoughtful about the way that we're putting these things together? Because sometimes we're like saying, I don't know why they're not getting it. And I do know why we're not getting it. I do know why my diet's failing, okay? Because the cheesecake for lunch is awesome, okay? So I hope you all have enjoyed this. What I think would make it better, and I wish, I wanted you to remember this, so I wanted it to be hands-on. Whoever has a beach ball gets to keep it, by the way, okay? And especially if you got hit in the head, you earned it. Okay, so you can keep it. And I think the only thing that might have made this more memorable, if it's like maybe I had dancing unicorns or something come out, that would be awesome. But what's going to happen is there's going to be information at the end for you so that you... And the unicorns will be passing out Skittles, otherwise known as unicorn poop, and they will be giving you a link to the information. So gosh, this is, who knew? You guys were all right here, right? Okay, so they'll greet you at the exits. The only thing that would make this better would be bubbles, but hey. Okay, so if you have any questions for me, I'm going to have to get out of here because someone else is going to be in here, but I'm at my booth in the exhibit hall. I don't know, I can't remember. I need to work on my memory. Thank you.